Hello and welcome to Inside The Octagon. I'm John Gooden, and here with me to break down even more fascinating fights is Dan Hardy. So on July 9th at UFC 200, the ground will shake as four of the most physically imposing combat athletes on the planet do battle in the octagon in two much anticipated bouts. Size, strength and star power. With these guys in action, events quite literally don't get bigger than this. So Dan, this was the last one to emerge on the card. Brock Lesnar versus Mark Hunt. Brock Lesnar, the biggest crossover star, I think, in the UFC, against probably one of the most supported and popular guys from that Pride era. He's got such a cult following. The Super Samoan Mark Hunt. Brilliant stuff. Let's take a look at them to get them up on our screen. Oh God, he's so big, isn't he? What a massive man. Former UFC heavyweight champion against a former K1 world champion. This is an interesting styles matchup.
It is. It's old school, new school. It's the freestyle wrestler against the kickboxer. You know what I mean? We've got a clash of styles here, but obviously in the modern day of MMA, the Brock Lesnar, the freestyle wrestler, has got good striking as well, and the great striker has got good takedown defense and good scramble. So it's just one of those spectacle fights that everyone wants to watch. Everyone loves to watch Mark Hunt fight, and Brock Lesnar is one of the most polarising characters in all of sport.
Well, Brock Lesnar's been away from the octagon for a little while. Mark Hunt's kind of set the tone with Ben Rothwell this year with his walk-off KO, Ben Rothwell with the go-go choke, and it's kind of made the heavyweight picture super exciting. But what's more exciting than the return of Brock Lesnar?
Yeah, well, it's just, you put Brock Lesnar in any fight and it makes it immediately very interesting because he has that X factor. What does he bring to the octagon this time? Especially because, he's had this time off, and it was also Brock Lesnar that made the call to the UFC to say, I want to be back on this card. I want to be at UFC 200.
And he also states that it was his disease that got the better of him. So we haven't seen the very best Brock Lesnar.
And he has a lot to offer. I mean, we don't get athletes as big as that. And, and he is one of the fastest athletes in the UFC as well. When you compare him to Demetrius Johnson, do you know what I mean? It's like, he doesn't look like he should be a fast athlete, but he is, and that's what makes him scary. But no one's quite as scary as Mark Hunt with his knockout power. So, well, what a great fight. Let's get straight into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, Brock Lesnar, we have to talk about the transition to the ground because obviously the fight's going to start standing. There's no secret that he wants this fight on the ground, and look at this sprint start. Now, how Cain Velasquez stopped that, I don't know. We've seen the Hulk do it in some of the Marvel comic movies where he stopped to train. I think that's the only way he could have prepared for this.
Very strong hamstrings.
Exactly, yeah. But look at this pressure that Brock Lesnar starts out with. And his striking actually looked quite confident in this fight, which we've not seen a lot. But he was all right to stay in the pocket, but ultimately it's the double leg that he wants. And, he's not messing about with Cain Velasquez taking him down, who's also a great wrestler. The Heath Herring fight was a real shocker, and that alone...
Because our producer loved this. He made us watch this a number of times and talk us through the fear that one might usually associate with what they're about to see.
Well, let's look at that spot just there. So he got knocked down. He took a really big, powerful shot. He mastered his backwards roll, so he was in a decent situation to recover. But when you look up and there are 2 meters between you and the biggest man in the UFC, and he's moving at about 100 miles an hour. That's scary. That is a scary situation right there for any person to get caught in, even a guy that's as big as Heath Herring, who's also had a lot of experience fighting big heavyweights as well. But look at the speed, that sprint start of Brock Lesnar, and the aggression that he comes into the fights with. Now, I was at this event, and when Brock Lesnar got into the octagon and started running around, it was very surreal. He doesn't look like a normal human being, just the size of him. To take on Randy Couture, Randy was obviously one of the best fighters ever, one of the best heavyweights of all time. And just look at the size difference. For me, this was almost like the old school heavyweight taking on the new school heavyweight. The guy that was previously so dominant in this division, taking on this new age athlete, this massive full-size heavyweight that didn't have nearly the experience that Randy Couture had coming in, but all of these physical attributes, unbelievable physical attributes, and obviously picked the heavyweight title up there in just a very few fights. So Brock Lesnar's a serious athlete. We can't discount that. People also forget that he's a 2-time Division I wrestler. So,
Yes.
and at the weight class that he's fighting at, he's always competing against big guys. So he's very good at manhandling people. And in the UFC, they don't come much bigger than him. So that automatically puts him in a very strong situation.
Okay, before we get into the next playlist, our friends in the interweb world have done it again.
All right.
They've given us some questions.
Thank you. What have you got for me?
Thank you indeed. Right, let's take a look. And I reckon that we're going to go with Jason's. If Brock is able to get it to the floor, will Mark Hunt be able to stand back up to drop bombs?
Well, let's think about the only fight that Mark Hunt really struggled with that, and that was the Stipe Miocic fight. Now, there were a lot of talk coming into that fight that he wasn't 100%. He did struggle with that. But even at less than 100%, he hung in there against the guy who's now the heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
So he does have good scrambles. If he can keep it up over 5 rounds, it's all then about whose cardio drops off first. Does Brock Lesnar's drop off first, having to kind of keep that pace on Mark Hunt? Or does Mark Hunt drop off, being under that kind of pressure, carrying that kind of weight? He has got good takedown defence, though. He's got good awareness. I mean, he came into MMA as a well-established kickboxing champion. He was a fantastic K1 fighter. But these scrambles that he's added into his game, look at this, uses the underhook, bumps back up, and he's good at getting his hips away. And even when people are closing the distance like Frank Mir was, you can see him stuffing the head, limp-legging out, just refusing to engage in the clinch, anti-clinch if you like. Head is in the way. Let's just go back and have another look at that. It's important the way he uses his head, especially given the fact that he's shorter than most of the guys he's fighting. At 5'11", this allows him to get down underneath his opponent. So you can see here he's got his head in a position here. So now for Frank Mir to do anything, he has to get underneath that head. He has to close the distance with the hips or get down to the feet, which Mark Hunt is obviously stopping with that barrier that he's creating with his head. Going to be very interesting if he can do that against Brock Lesnar, which is going to be the question until the fight begins. I'm not saying that Mark Hunt doesn't have the awareness, he doesn't have the knowledge. And then once he does get this takedown defence down, once he has stuffed a couple of takedowns early on in the fight, then he can start opening up with his hands. And this is obviously where Mark Hunt gets very dangerous, when he's confident that you're not going to be able to take him down because you feel under pressure, and he can just start letting go of his fist. And he doesn't need 100% power. You'll see in some of his knockout shots in the next playlist of Mark Hunt that a lot of the shots are just very short, bang, and his opponent falls down. It's a very unnatural power, almost as unnatural as the size of Brock Lesnar. And these spectacle fights that, you know, it's just so interesting to see how these two unusual human beings clash. And I mean, you know, no one has power like Mark Hunt, but no one has speed and size like Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, unbelievable. And Tuchel there, he's a teammate
of
Brock Lesnar, which gives him an interesting insight, I think.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of crossover in this, which I'll discuss in a second, partly to do with where Hunt decided to do his training when he got to Las Vegas. So there's a lot of interesting side stories going on. This is definitely a matchup that makes sense. Okay, well, let's take a look at Lesnar then. What have you got for us? Well, we've seen him how he gets the fight to the floor, but it's when the fight's on the floor. I mean, again, Heath Herring, muscles and beautiful. It's always about getting it to the floor, though, always. Well, when you've got that kind of size, look at the way he's laying. He's heavy on his opponents. People disappear. Yeah. If you were to look at an aerial view, you wouldn't be able to see there's a person. No. And even when he gets put on his back, just the pure strength and size of him. See, look, let's just have a look what he's doing here. Yeah. He actually doesn't get this technique exactly right. He actually misses the leg. But let's just have a look at this. So what he's doing is he's holding this foot of Randy with the intention of pulling this foot up, and then you're going to see him kick with the back leg to try and sweep it. But even though that doesn't work, just the sheer strength of the man, he's able to pull Randy to the floor. And Frank Mir knows Brock Lesnar better than everybody else. He's fought him twice. The first one was successful, but Brock learnt from that. And in the second fight, it was all about tying Frank up on the floor. You look at this grip on the inside bicep. That's a lovely grip. Throws him to the floor, and Frank's a huge heavyweight as well. And here we are. Look, now you can't see it in this situation, but the reason that Frank is stuck is because he's trapped in half guard here, so he can't turn his hips in any way, and his back arm is trapped around his back by Brock Lesnar. So now he's just stuck. He's got one arm to defend himself, and he's in his own corner. I mean, this is his father here. What an awful situation for his dad to be in that situation when you got Brock Lesnar on top of your boy just hammering shots. But this is what Brock Lesnar's all about. It's about bullying people. It's about being aggressive, being dominant, and the whole ethos of his approach to fighting is about this. I mean, even when he fought Shane Carwin, he endured the first round. He almost nearly stopped in the first round.
1 or 2 shots away from it.
Yeah, and then this a really nice arm triangle here on a guy that's got a good ground game.
Yeah.
And you've got to think of the squeeze that Brock Lesnar's putting on in this situation. So let me just draw these these lines in. So we've got this pressure coming down from this shoulder here, which is driving into the back of Carwin's tricep, which is effectively choking him on one side here. Then we also have the squeeze from this arm, which is putting pressure on this direction. And then also Brock Lesnar's head pushing in this direction. So you can imagine the pressure that Shane Carwin's head's
pretty
under.
Significant pieces of
awful
anatomy.
This would be bad enough if he was a regular-sized human being, but he's not. You know, this is Brock Lesnar on top of you. So when he's squeezing like that, and it's just a slow, steady squeeze as well, there was nothing Shane Carwin could do. He gave everything that he had in that first round. He almost got Brock out of there, but Lesnar was able to withstand that barrage and come back with that second round and get that finish.
So let's move on to the Super Samoan then, and Mark Hunt. And he's very, very good at creating instances in the fight where he can really impose what he's very, very good at. I know that you got some examples of this.
I have, yeah. It's quite reactive. He throws a few shots early on in the fight to see what his opponent does, to see how they react, to see where they put their head, and then he starts to look for that knockout shot.
Fight IQ comes up a lot.
Yes,
He's a smart dude.
It does. He's got a lot of experience in the K1 ring. You've got to remember that. There's the uppercut, so make a note of that. Now,
the jumping
uppercut.
Uppercut.
Now that just there, that's a Mark Hunt that realises that the fight's about to be over because he knows.
See, I'd be upset and a little embarrassed, but he's now taken that.
Yeah. That was a useful lesson because he's exposed himself. He's shown his weakness. So then, as we let this play on, I'm going to see if I can pause this just at the right time. The lead hand is just for the reaction, just to get his opponent to drop their head. Look how his hand's down. He's confident. His chin's up. He knows what's coming. He's going to throw that lead hand with no intention of landing it whatsoever. And as he lowers his head, here comes the big uppercut, well, the little uppercut, in fact. There's not much on it at all. Bam.
It's almost like he's holding a pad. And he's getting to weave underneath.
That's it. He set him up for it. He knows exactly what he's doing. And he lands a clean left hook. His opponent goes down, and in typical Mark Hunt style, and we'll watch it in full speed, he goes down, just walks off. The walk-off knockout. He knows when he lands that shot. He knows when he's seen that shot before he's even landed it. And there it is again. As his opponent's dropping his head. We saw it against Roy Nelson as well, which is the next fight we're going to see. And it was a bit more complicated than the Roy Nelson fight. There was a bit more work. So this is the uppercut that misses. And Nelson smiles. He acknowledges that missed him. So now Mark Hunt throws a right hand because he realises that programming didn't work. He missed his opportunity. So now he needs to convince Roy Nelson that he has to keep dropping his head. So his next punch is the right hand. Nelson drops his head. Mark Hunt sees it. Mental note. Now, he threw a jab just there, just to make sure that Roy Nelson's going to do the same thing. This is why he's so economical, because he doesn't waste anything. He doesn't throw power into punches that he knows aren't going to land. Like that jab, he didn't have any interest in landing that punch at all. He's just checking Roy Nelson's reaction as the jab comes out. Nelson's head drops. Mark Hunt acknowledges it. Okay, right hand's ready, look. He's looking where he's going to be. He's making notes, making mental notes. So then as the fight progresses now, all he's going to do is he's going to push forward against Roy Nelson. He's going to throw a lazy jab. And he's just going to do it until he sees that reaction from Roy. Here comes the reaction. As he's backing up to the fence, Roy lowers his level. And here comes the uppercut again. Roy's head comes down. Boom, right on the chin.
Right on the kisser.
Beautiful. Same thing again, though. He knows what he wants to do. It's like, OK, drop your head, drop your head, drop your head, bam, walk-off knockout. And that was the first time Roy Nelson had been knocked out clean like that as well. Face planted, and Mark Hunt walks off.
Is that what he means by he's going to knock the lips off of you?
I think he could knock a few things off people with the power that he's got in his hands. Same thing again with Frank Mir. With the timing. This time he noticed that Frank Mir's dipping away, though. Frank Mir was dipping his head to one side, which meant that he had to adapt it because the uppercut would have fallen short, so he switched it to a straight right instead. So as Frank dips his head here, he punches down towards where his head's going to be. Bang, look at that. Yeah. Almost missed him, but managed to time it just perfectly and then walks off. And Frank Mir actually thanked him after that fight for not hitting him again. Mark Hunt knows when he's finished the fight. And I'll speak from personal experience. Sometimes when you land that punch, it feels so clean that you know the fight's over. I've just never had the calmness of mind to be able to walk off like that. I get too excited and want to run in and finish it off, but that just shows how long he's been around at this game, you know, where he can play, where he can go, okay, that's that fight over. Where's the next one? He's been around this game for so long. That veteran mentality is going to serve him well in this fight.
He's been doing that a little while. I'm sure he's done it to a few training partners as well, because you don't just get that from competition.
No.
But he's been around all sorts of competition. You mentioned K1 earlier, but we've also seen him in the good old days of Pride.
Oh, yeah. Well, I like to go through the archives and pull a little bit out from time to time.
What did you find when you were in the archives?
Pull this one out. Well, this is not the first time that Mark Hunt has fought a massive human being. A massive human being that's good at wrestling as well.
Okay.
And believe it or not, I found someone that he fought that was bigger than Brock Lesnar.
Bigger than Brock?
So Brock Lesnar cuts to heavyweight, which is 265. Dan Bobish in Pride 28, I believe it was, he weighed in at 335 pounds. That's 152 kilos. Jeez. So if we get into this fight, I mean, you can just see the size of him. This is Mark Hunt's second MMA fight. This is right after he crossed over from K1. He stepped into Pride. He thought, I've done that. I've knocked a bunch of people out. Let's give this a go. And he gets put up against this absolute monster, who was one of Mike Tyson's bodyguards. If anybody needs a bodyguard, does Mike Tyson need a bodyguard? Look at this wrestling ability immediately. Good scrambles, stays on his feet, immediately puts his opponent under pressure. Now, this is later on in the fight. This is about 5 minutes later. He finds that uppercut again. Now, there was that surge forward from Bobish, and he lands a nice uppercut, glancing just to the side of the head, and then moves out the way and lets Bobish land on the floor. Beautiful head cams on the referees as well. I quite like this. It's a bit of an unusual angle that we see. And then as Bobish was getting up, he lands a really nice body kick, and Bobish goes straight back down to the floor again. You know, this is not the first time that Mark Hunt has fought a monstrous fighter and a guy that's trying to put him on his back and smother him and beat him up. And he found a way to win in 2004, and I have a feeling he'll probably find a way to win in 2016 as well. But Brock Lesnar is the one that's going to ask all those questions. And when it comes to wrestling ability, Dan Bobish was good, Brock Lesnar is amazing. So that's the next challenge.
Also, Brock Lesnar has this acceleration and aggression that he didn't have.
No. Well, this is
what Hunt has to. And actually, they've got that kind of personality thing where Hunt is very laid back. But Lesnar is...
He's on the opposite end of the spectrum.
He's like the V12, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he's just going to come crashing at you.
Yeah, they're very, very different fighters. Hunt is very calm. That walk-off knockout, you're never going to see that with Brock Lesnar. He's going to still try to pull your arms off until the referee pulls you off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's got that anger and that aggression. And this is the reason I put this together. So this is the second Frank Mir fight. The only person that beat him at that point was Frank Mir. Heel hooked him. No touch of gloves, right? Now, we've seen the highlights of this fight. Frank Mir loses by TKO. Brock Lesnar stands up. Now, this is the Brock Lesnar that everybody's facing when they step in there. Look at that. That is ferocious. Now, I'm not saying Mark Hunt's going to be intimidated by that, but you've got to bear in mind that when you're fighting Brock Lesnar, not only are you dealing with a 280-pound man, you're also dealing with a hell of a lot of aggression that is unnatural for heavyweights.
And afters.
Like falling out with... Now, look at this. Give me space. He's like angry. And then the doctor comes in. What do you want? You know what I mean? Everybody is there to be fought with. Everybody is there for conflict. And that is his operating system. Joe Rogan mentioned it. He's a throwback. He's a Viking. His mentality is warfare. Mark Hunt is a master at warfare. So when these two clash, there's going to be fireworks, whether it's ground and pound or whether it's a big explosive knockout. Goosebumps, honestly. I cannot wait.
Two big boys going at it. It's not for rankings or anything.
Nope.
It's for our pure entertainment.
Yes.
I love this. Of course, Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt aren't the only heavyweights on the night. Kicking off the main card at UFC 200 sees the return of former UFC heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez, back and more determined than ever to return to title contention. In his way, top-ranked Hawaiian Travis Browne looks to take the biggest scalp of his career. Well, a heavyweight fixture which does have massive implications for the title is Velasquez versus Browne. Let's set it up with these two big old boys.
Yes, yeah.
Former champion and the biggest fight of this man's career.
Without a doubt, yeah. I mean, you know, he's had a couple of difficult fights, has Travis Browne. He's been moving around training camps and stuff. I'm hoping he's more settled because his potential is really limitless. You know, at 6'7", he can cause problems for anybody in the division.
Yeah.
He's not going to be anybody. Even Stefan Struve at 7 foot tall, he's not going to dwarf him. You know what I mean? He's still going to be able to contend at range with a tall fighter. To be able to go out there and put on a good performance against Cain is going to be a massive feather in his cap if he can do that. But Cain has a lot to prove coming off that loss against Verdum. You know, he feels the need to really prove that he is still heavyweight champion material.
Okay, right. Well, let's take a look at Travis Browne first then.
Okay.
And what is it that you've picked out you want to talk about from the top?
It's the unusual stuff that he catches you with. It's the stuff that most people don't utilise as fight-ending techniques. Now, in the Gonzaga fight, he backs him up against the fence, he throws this massive head kick and Gonzaga closes the distance. But the scrambles are good. The scrambles are really useful because he's going to need them against Cain Velasquez.
Oh, yeah.
This is going to be very familiar to him in this fight against Cain because he's going to be pushed up against the fence. So if he can utilise these evil elbows against the fence, unbelievable. That is a position that Cain finds himself in when he's trying to work a takedown. And he does tend to spend a bit of time on the legs trying to get his opponent to the floor. I mean, he does it the same thing against Josh Barnett here, but he uses a really nice knee on the way in. Watch how he creates this space. We're going to get a replay of it as well, so you won't miss it. Really nice knee there. Barnett goes straight to his knees, already hurt, and then the elbows come again. This was the second time he used those elbows to finish. That is a really strong technique for him. Watch the knee. Boom, beautiful knee. Stiffen him up, goes straight to his knees, and then just to finish it off, the icing on the cake are these really nice elbows to the temple. Nicely placed as well. This is a situation that Cain Velasquez cannot find himself in. He does like to smother his opponents. He does like to hang on the legs and drag them down to the floor. But if you're spending too long there, that could be a major issue.
Putting those bad boys down from the lighting rig as well, isn't it?
The lighting rig, definitely. And I'm not saying he's not got wrestling. He has got some wrestling, but it is much more of a strength-based approach to the grappling arts. We talk about techniques that most people don't use. Anderson Silva, you know, Lyoto Machida. Travis Browne puts himself in the same category with the front kick to the face against Overeem. Struggled in this fight. He was under a lot of pressure to start with, but then he got backed up against the fence. You can see him taking deep breaths. He picks that one shot and he knows when to rush in and get that fight finished. And that was a massive win for him as well.
Yeah.
He has the potential to beat any heavyweight in the division. There's no doubt about that. With a good training camp, with a solid team behind him and consistency, I think he gets a run at the title. But he has to get through Cain Velasquez first because it doesn't matter. If you lose to Cain, it doesn't matter who you beat after that. Cain Velasquez is the man to beat right now if you want to even be considered as a future champion.
Little side note, do you think he has that consistency of team and situation right now?
Well, it's all about finding a place that you're comfortable with. And when a fighter is constantly moving around different training camps, it means that they're finding something that's not comfortable for them and they're still looking for that right environment. But I do think he is. I do think he's settling down now. I do think he's starting to find some consistency. And I think it will show in his performances. Okay.
Well, someone who has been ever so consistent with their training camp over the years is Velasquez and the guys down at AKA. That has been churning out champions. They have a formula there which works very, very well for him.
They do. I mean, you've just got to look at the team there. You know, I mean, Dave Camarillo for a start with the grappling. Crazy Bob Cook is always the one that comes to mind. Really, really interesting people to have in your corner. You know, and he's got DC, he's got Rockholds, you know, he's got championship material there to spar with on a daily basis. Of course.
I know he's a smaller guy, but
the knowledge is still there, though, isn't it? So his fights against JDS, this was what we saw. This is what I was talking about with that forward pressure. Pushing his opponents up against the fence, wearing them out. Just being far too much for most people to handle. Same thing with Bigfoot. This really nice ground and pound that he uses, where he uses inside hooks and overhooks to create space so he can land those clean shots. A lot of people don't get away with that kind of stuff, and he has a real knack to creating space to land shots. And just the way he manhandles big heavyweights like Ben Rothwell and throws them around. And Brock Lesnar, the biggest heavyweight of all, just threw him on the floor and dominated him. And you can see the size difference between the two. Like, if I stood next to Cain Velasquez, he would look like a heavyweight.
Yeah.
But if you put him next to another heavyweight, even Travis Browne, 6'7", Cain Velasquez looked quite an ordinary-sized person.
Same thing as the drop.
Yeah, exactly. But so that's what makes it even more impressive, that when he's stepping in there against these heavyweights, he can generate power to knock them out, he can generate the power to lift them up in the air and slam them on the floor, and he can keep a pace on them that will break some of the best heavyweight fighters in the world. He will put a pace on people that will make people want to find a way out of the fight.
Yeah.
And that is one hell of a way to beat somebody. You can take a fight away from somebody, you can choke them out, you can knock them out, but when you give them the option to get out of the fight and they take it, that's when you're championship material. And we know Cain Velasquez is championship material. The question in this fight is Travis Browne championship material. And in order to answer that question, he has to beat Cain.
Okay, couple of quick questions for you.
Fire away.
So, was it a blip in the matrix for Velasquez when he faced off against Verdum? Was it the altitude? Because he was cardio Cain.
Yes, yeah, it most definitely was. I think he's acknowledged that as well. Verdum made the good choice of going out early to Mexico City to adjust, to acclimatise to the altitude, and he looked great in the fight. Whereas Cain, he got out there 2 weeks before. The whole process seemed a little bit rushed and a little bit disorganised for him. And I think that his coaches took that on their responsibility as well. It's not going to happen going forward. They're the lessons that stay with you for life. And, you know, he's fighting in Vegas, in a town that he's comfortable fighting. He can drive from his house. Do you know what I mean? He's not too far away. California's not that far. So it puts him in a much stronger position going into this fight.
Just a quick follow-up to that one. Is he repaired enough? It was his back, I think. He had a serious injury. With his style of fighting, the injuries that he's accumulated, is he strong enough? Is he strong enough to be the best Cain Velasquez, to make that run to be the #1 guy again?
I think he is. When he was the #1, he wasn't 100%, and that's worth remembering. All the way through his career, the thing that's plagued him has been injuries. You know, it's slowed him down in training, it's pulled him out of fights, it's restricted the things that he can do to prepare for a fight. I've not heard anything going into this fight about any kind of restrictions. He seems to be training comfortably, training at full speed. Obviously, DC's preparing for the same date as well, so the energy in the camp's very positive. I think it bodes well for him. If he can get around the 6'7" Travis Browne, then you know he's doing well. But yeah, I think he'll be ready for this one for sure.
Exciting times.
Most definitely.
Exciting fights. And let's look at the card. It is a thing of beauty.
It's amazing.
A reminder then, right at the top, Cormier versus Jones, Lesnar Hunt, Tate Nunez, Aldo Edgar, Velasquez Browne kicking things off.
Incredible, absolutely incredible.
Just take a moment to enjoy that.
There are so many fights on that card that I want to see that I don't even know where to start. I'll be excited for weeks coming up to this fight.
Can't wait to get out there.
It's going to be great.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this heavyweight focus episode of Inside the Octagon. Keep the conversation going in the comment section below and on Twitter using the hashtag Inside the Octagon. Remember, this is just one of 5 episodes we have coming your way for UFC 200. Links to the others will be in the notes section below. Next time, we get to grips with the other 2 title fights on July 9th. Miesha Tate versus Amanda Nunes and the rematch, Jose Aldo versus Frankie Edgar. But of course, with Brock Lesnar back in the octagon, we couldn't possibly leave you without the Beast having the last word.